Good evening, everyone. I hope you and your family are doing well during this global pandemic. Keep doing your part to stay safe and help others when you can. My Nioh 2 boss ranking is going to have several elements built into it. The first of which is going to be difficulty. We're going to take a look at the difficulty of each boss, whether or not they're too easy, too hard, just right, or laughably over the top, ridiculously difficult like some of these bosses can be. The second element we're going to look at is the boss design themselves, whether or not I feel like they're a pretty cool designed boss or if they're no good. The third element is going to be the music. I think the music and the soundtrack play a very important part in each boss, and whether or not that music sticks with you long after the fight is over. The last thing we're going to be looking at is level design, whether or not the level is fairly or unfairly tilted towards the player, and if the level itself is cool. And finally, ultimately, personal preference. Kind of taking all those factors together, whether or not I thought it was fun, enjoyable, or if it just wasn't very fun. All of these things are kind of building together to formulate what my ultimate rankings are. So I hope that you guys enjoy this list. There are 25 main bosses in the game. I am not going to be going over side bosses or dojo bosses or repeat bosses because there would be just too much to cover. We could look at that later on down the road, but for now we're going to be sticking with the main bosses, and we are going to start at the bottom of the list with number 25. Bringing up the rear of my list is going to be Maeda Toshiie. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Maeda is almost a mid-boss. I don't even know if you can consider him a full regular boss, but for our purposes, he is in the main game. He does have a boss pool, so we're going to go with it. Maeda is boring. He's a human boss with a giant spear that's on fire that he will do pretty basic attacks. I find him no more difficult than some of the souped up NPCs you encounter throughout the game. I mean, he's got a couple tricks up his sleeve where he dashes at you and spins his spear around wildly and buffs and things like that. But otherwise, he's incredibly unremarkable. Very basic design. The stage is not good. It's tiny, so you can barely move. For the first couple of times, I was really steering clear of the fire because I thought it was going to damage me, but that was not the case. The music is very basic, nothing really memorable here. Ultimately, he is just a bump in the road through the main mission. So for that reason, absolutely nothing to remember him by. He is the bottom of my list. Checking in number 24 is Hashisuka Koroku. Pretty much the same reasons I put Maeda at the bottom of the list is why Hashisuka is going to be slightly above him. He uses a Kusarigama. He uses very basic attacks, a lot of flail whips. He has an occasional summon, jumps around a lot, very unremarkable. The only reason I gave him a slight bump here is the stage. There's a lot more room to maneuver on the bridge, and it gives you a little bit more freedom in this fight. Difficulty is just like Maeda, it's a bump in the road, and the music, again, unremarkable. So I'm putting Hashisuka slightly above Maeda for those reasons in terms of stage, but not much else separates him from Maeda. Pretty similar guys, same experience. That's why he's number 24. You guys can see there's a little bit of a trend going on with the bottom three of this list. Checking in at number 23 is our old friend William. Very cool to see a protagonist in one game become an enemy in the second game. Otherwise, again, unremarkable human fight. He whips around wildly with his dual swords, charges at you occasionally, has an occasional summon. Really nothing out of the ordinary. He actually ends this fight when he's down to, I don't know, a little over a quarter of his health bar-ish. So you don't even have to defeat this guy. The reason he gets slight bumps above the bottom two is the arena's pretty cool. It's a nice little water setting, and I don't mind the music as much, and there's a little bit of nostalgia here fighting someone we're familiar with. Other than that, there's not much else to say about William. It's an easy fight. It's a bump in the road. I think it's just a little bit of fan service for the people who enjoyed Nioh, seeing an old friend return. But otherwise, he is our number 23 on this boss ranking. Number 22, we have Imagawa Yoshimoto, another human boss. Again, this is a trend. He's not bad. He's getting a little bit better for build. I don't mind his design as much. He's kind of a quirky looking fella. He's got black teeth when he grabs you, and a pretty cool summon with a giant elephant. Otherwise unremarkable. Stage is okay. Just kind of a ring-ish camp that you're kind of enclosed in. Not a ton of room to move around in. Difficulty's pretty easy. Didn't have much trouble with them. Music's not too bad. It's kind of a little jumpy, upbeat thingy, little concerto that keeps your heart moving. Otherwise, those are the best things I can say about him. Pretty easy, basic attacks, shoots some lightning arrows, flails his sword at you occasionally, drops a giant elephant to stomp on the ground, and kind of an AoE attack. Again, a human boss at the bottom of the list, but getting a little bit better. Number 21 is kind of a unique spot for me to put these two. I know you fight them multiple times throughout the game in various forms. The footage I have is from a side battle. I couldn't find my main game footage, but this is going to be Mizuki and Gozuki. And the reason I had to put them together is because they are a main boss mission, and I feel that them together is something you do often, and they are deserving of a spot. Both very well designed, kind of these cool horse beast things. Each one does very unique things. Mizuki likes to shoot these spooky ghost things at you and has some charge attacks, and Gozuki is constantly on the charge. So it makes for a very welfare version of Ornstein Smo. Not nearly as good, but not super difficult. I can't really rank the music because the music is different each time you fight them. Design's different each time, stage design I mean, but they themselves are pretty cool, and I really enjoyed fighting these two together, and that's why they are getting a bump above the super basic human bosses. Number 20 is Diadara Bocchi. I can't stand this boss. I had to give him a little bit of bump because of design. I think he's really cool and the soundtrack is really cool. Nioh, for whatever reason, has never been able to do gimmick boss fights well, and this is why I put him near the bottom of my list. I found this fight to be really unfair until I kind of just settled myself down and was able to learn the rhythms of it. But basically, the goal of this fight is to take out each side. You get a chance to run up and do a visceral attack. And then when you get to the halfway point, you have to kind of repeat it all again until you get access to take out his head. I didn't like the fact that while you're focusing on one end, another end can shoot lasers at you, can do different attacks. So really, it's just a matter of keeping your patience, and you always have to be peering to the other side to see if some one-shot laser kill is going to get you. Difficulty, I just didn't like it. I didn't feel it was done right. It was very much a cheaper version of Wolnir, kind of the same concept. You're hitting two sides and then you get to the end. He gets good marks for music and design. Other than that, there's not much else to speak of here. I just didn't enjoy this boss, but slightly better than the human bosses we listed below. In all honesty, I was flipping a coin between Diadara and Lady Osakabe. I found them both to be equally frustrating. Lady sometimes even more so, because essentially you're fighting two or three of these heads, eyeballs on each side of the roof, and trying to pay attention to everything is darn near impossible. Again, I felt the difficulty in this fight bordered on unfair until, again, I took my time and learned how she moved. And the sloth spell, of course, throughout this entire game was very handy for me. What happens is you have to take these eyes out, more or less poke these eyes with your sword until you get an opportunity to run up and smash the main eyeball, and then you basically rinse and repeat. The reason I gave her a slight edge over Diadara was the scale of the fight. You're on this roof, rain's blowing. I liked her design just as much, if not a little bit better, a little more intimidating. Music's also just as good. So, again, really close. Another gimmick fight that I don't think Nioh handled very well. In Dark Souls games, in Nioh games, and these types of games, for some reason, the designers keep making gimmick fights, and I just never feel like they work out well. Again, another case, I just didn't like this fight. There are some things that kept it from the bottom, but otherwise, I found the difficulty to be pretty unfair. And very much in line with Diadara. Number 18 is our first humanish boss that's starting to emerge out of the bottom. It's Saito Yoshitatsu. I really enjoyed this fight, and it's hard for me to describe why. He's pretty basic in his own right. The stage is not that good. It's just a small wooden room you're in. Music's pretty cool. I just like the way the fight flowed. There's some good transitions between him being very basic and then bringing out the yokai transformation with his giant fire club, and then he throws his lightning eagle at you, and all these various move sets that are pretty aggressive and can be sometimes hard to anticipate. So I found him more enjoyable than all the humans in the two gimmick fights. Still not a great boss by any stretch. We're still not even past the halfway point of this list yet, but getting better, and a boss that, while not memorable, was very enjoyable. I hate the snakes in this game. Every time I saw one of those female snakes, I just got frustrated. Yatsu no Kami, checking in at number 17. He is a very well-balanced fight. This was the first time through my playthrough of Nioh 2 where I felt adequately challenged. It wasn't frustrating. I really had to learn his movesets and transitions between the light and dark world, and when he'd stick his head in the ground and emerge and have his snakes come out and all these different factors that went into this fight. He'd do that slow shrivel at you. You got to really learn how to do your strong counter attacks. I really enjoyed the difficulty in this fight, and that's why it's not high up on my list, but kind of in the middle-ish of this list. Otherwise, boss design, he's a giant snake. I've seen him before. Music's not good. It's just a screeching, ugh. Level's okay. Gives you enough room to move, but not much else. Pretty unremarkable. I just found the difficulty was really good for this part of the game. Really challenged you. It got you frustrated. Got you thinking you're going to be in for a really difficult game, but not to the point where you wanted to rip your hair out. So, number 17, Yatsu no Kami. Solid boss fight. And we're getting to the middle of our list. Enenra checks in at number 16. A really well-designed boss. I like the way he looks, this giant flaming golem thing with cool hair. Stage is kind of unique. It's a wooden area that's on fire, and what makes it unique is you have these columns that are flaming that can be hit to do some water damage on the boss itself. Water's key here. If you have anything that can buff with water, anything to do water damage, you're going to want to make that a priority. The difficulty itself is very fair. I never felt overwhelmed. It was just a good challenge. He's going to be throwing slow-moving tornadoes, fast-moving tornadoes. He'll bolt at you with the whipping tornado thing. He'll switch into dark mode to add in some different timings and things to his punch and jump attacks. Music's pretty cool. Level design, like I said, is okay. It's pretty basic, but there's some cool things that make it kind of interactive. And I think this is a very solid boss. Still not great, as he's more in the average column, but again, we're moving quickly upwards our list, so you can start to see an uptick in the boss quality. Number 15, we got Saika Magoichi. A very fun fight. The design himself is pretty cool. He's got the gun, so you can never get too close or too far. He kind of keeps you at a distance. He's got the Firebird that will unleash at you on occasion. And overall, a pretty cool designed boss. Level is pretty nice. It's well designed. It's got some of those statues in the background. There's a lot of room to move around. I found myself taking advantage of the columns quite often. Music's not bad. It's kind of upscale stuff. Difficulty was a little bit on the easy side. I think I might have beat him first or second try. Not too tough. I think the fact that there's a lot to the arena where you can move and hide and take cover really helped this fight. With my Switchglaive, I was constantly pressing him when I could, and that seemed to do the trick. Otherwise, I did really enjoy this fight. He was one of my more favorite human fights. Definitely better than all the early round humans. Still slightly below average, but we're getting there. Very solid entry for Saika at number 15. The build up to this fight is unreal. When you're walking along and you hear the rumbles, you know you're in for something ginormous, and then you land in the giant arena and it's Gyuki. I love the way this boss is designed. This big, giant, freaky looking thing with wings and horns and multiple eyes as he slogs at you and takes big cuts. I think he's awesomely designed. The level itself, pretty boring. You have just a big open arena. There's some steps you can climb, but for me, every time I tried to do them, he just knocked me down. You're fighting basically the giant bald bull of Nioh 2. In the latter half, he will basically telegraph his charges at you, and you can do your strong counter. You're going to get a lot of hits on him. The trick is to keep moving. He has some weak spots on his legs. I found myself waiting for him to do his charge attacks. I'd use my gun and bow a lot to do damage from a distance. The sloth spell almost made him, I want to say super easy, because I did die a few times to him, but it telegraphed everything for him pretty well. Music's kind of cool. It's unique. Got annoying sometimes, but otherwise it's not bad. I found his difficulty to be pretty fair. The sloth spell for me made him, not too bad. I did probably struggle with him more than I should have. Otherwise, I heard he wasn't too bad, but I like this boss. Mostly because of the design. I think he's really cool and intimidating, and I had a fun time fighting Gyuki. Checking in at number 14. Ryomen is Nioh 2's version of the Flexile Sentry. You got two sides doing pretty different things. You got a fire and an ice. Fire is the heavy hitter. The ice is the bow shooter. And they will occasionally drag each other along to face you. Sometimes they'll attack simultaneously and they whip around. I really like the design on this boss. He's really cool looking. I found the level to be pretty okay as well. You can hit the shards lying around to buff your weapon to do the corresponding damage. So obviously if you're attacking the ice side, you want to get the fire buff going. Music's alright, kind of standard Nioh stuff. Difficulty was pretty right on. I found him to be a very fair challenge. Much of how I feel with Gyuki, I really like the design of this boss. And overall, just a pretty solid entry. And he is pretty much sitting right in the middle of my list. So this is pretty much from now on where bosses are going to be above average to getting better and better. If Magara was difficult at all, he could have easily found a spot in the top 5 of my list. Because otherwise, everything about this boss is great. The design is so cool. This kind of slow-moving, badass ice warrior. I like the level a lot with the frost flailing around and ice crystals behind you. Music is awesome. It was probably one of the first times in Nioh 2 where I really was just enthralled with the soundtrack. So everything about this boss works. He's just too darn easy. Everything is really slow and predictable. You can see everything coming from a mile away. And it made it even easier for my end when I used the sloth spell on him, and I could just kind of do whatever I needed to do to win this fight. Even without sloth, it's just everything is so telegraphed. He does a lot of distance slices where he'll thunder into the earth, and you'll have some ice crystals forming at you. A lot of slow moving, wind up thrusts, and everything is very predictable and counterable. So, like I said, everything about this fight except the difficulty is great. Again, Magara, if you were just a little bit tougher, you could have been an all-time great on this list and an all-time great. But otherwise, that's what's holding you back at number 12. My old friend, we meet again, Tokichiro. This is the second time you fight Tokichiro, and he's actually below the first encounter. I love the music in both fights. The music's great. It's probably either my second or third most favorite track in this game. Very similar to how he looks the first time. He's a human boss, but he's got some cool hats and things he wears this time around. Looks a little bit different, a little more theatrical than a basic human guy. Level design, it's not too bad. It's just a big open area. Ironically enough, I found Tokichiro the second time around to be a lot easier than he was the first time around, which is kind of odd. I was expecting it to be a tougher fight. I found first Tokichiro to be really difficult. I just can never get the hang of it. He attacks a lot of the same stuff you're expecting from the first fight with some new twists to it. A lot of distance range things he'll throw at you. I think the thing that I found very easy for him was when he did the fire and lightning. He threw all those things at you. Found it easy to get around him and get some good damage on him. Dark mode, not too bad. Gets a little bit more aggressive, does some air attacks and things like that. But I treat him like I treat pretty much every other human boss, is keep my distance, get a few shots in, run away, and then wait for him to open up. And I found when he did his fire and lightning blade attack, he did that for a really long time. Felt like 4 or 5 seconds. I could just get around him and punish. So second Tokichiro, really enjoyed the fight. Not as much as the first one, but still a very good fight nonetheless. We have now entered the top 10 of this list. And checking in at the top of this list is Tatarimokke. First owl boss I've really enjoyed. I don't know how many owl bosses I've had in the past. Really cool design boss, got the 3 eyes, and from what I've read, I don't know if it was the wiki or from another commenter, that you can actually, in the regular stage, do some early damage to him while you see him flying around. Love the design of him, really cool. Got the 3 eyes, just well done design. The level's okay, but they do put a very cool, unique spin on it. When he enters his dark mode, the level will become essential. There's a crystal that's surfaced, and you have to go take it out as quick as you can, and if you do, he will drop for a big visceral attack. So it kind of adds a unique flair to the fight, and while you're trying to take this crystal out, he comes up to you and starts punishing you. Music's not too bad, kind of haunting, kind of quiet, doesn't really make a huge difference either way. Difficulty I found a bit on the easy side, offered a pretty fair challenge, but not too bad. Overall, a really well done boss fight, one I really enjoyed. Not amazing by any stretch, but it was definitely deserving of one in the top 10. Number 9, we have Kamaitachi. I really love this boss. Kind of a feral cat that flies around with just incredible quickness and whips tornadoes at you. Everything about this fight is really enjoyable. Design's pretty cool. He's just this fast-moving cat thingy. Level very well done. You're in the forest. You got some opportunities to hide behind trees and give yourself some cover. Do keep in mind that those trees may not stop you from all of his attacks. He does have some wind attacks that are going to get through. In his dark mode, he ends up splitting out and having clones of himself all flying at you. Doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to attack up close, so you got to take what you can get and get out of there as quick as you can. Music's pretty cool, kind of fun, upbeat. Difficulty is very, in my opinion, I found him very difficult. It took me multiple attempts. I could just never get into the right rhythm. Very, very fun boss, deserving of a spot in the top 10. His design was a little basic, but as a feral cat, I guess what else can you do with him? But otherwise, a very enjoyable boss, Kamaitachi, number 9. I have to thank Dark Souls for starting the whole Quelaag trend, because as soon as you hear the cackling and something whipping around on the intro cinematic, of course they have to do this slightly slow pan up to Kasha, this feral cat lady on 2 giant spokes with a big fire flail. Obviously, this design is cool as hell. I don't think I've ever seen anything like her before. I mean, obviously, you have Quelaag, who was on a spider, and she resembles that, but is on giant wheels. Music's really cool, upbeat, kind of fast-paced, kind of throwing you for a loop. The level's all right. It doesn't give you a ton to work with. You always kind of worry. You have all this fire going on around you. If stuff can possibly fall on you, that's not the case. It's just everything's ablaze. I was fortunate enough. I found her pretty easy. The sloth spell did a number on her, and I was able to hit the wheels for some pretty extravagant damage. Otherwise, I really like this fight, and that's why it's number 8. A bit on the easy side, but everything else does really well with Kasha. So we are rapidly approaching the top 5, and she is just on the outside of that list. It's not very often that tutorial bosses are this high up on lists. Mizuki is very much like Udix Gundyr from Dark Souls 3, and he is a very well-designed first boss to get you used to what you need to get used to. I tried to fight him without doing too many fancy tactics and just trying to run around him when he did his ghost spell, tracking ghost spell, and I could get a couple hits in, but I got punished early for not trying to do the strong counter attacks, which are very prevalent in this fight. You got to take advantage of that. I ended up finding a really cheap tactic to run around that hut while he was in dark mode and waited for him to get out of it so I could keep taking my opportunities to get him. I really like the design of him, this cool hybrid horse, whatever he is thingy. I think the level design is awesome for a first boss, gives you enough opportunity to kind of play at your own pace and take a break when he's doing different things. You can hide behind the tree or the hut. Music's really cool, kind of a unique, scary first boss music. I like it a lot. And like I said, I thought the difficulty was really fair and balanced and perfectly challenged for a tutorial boss. So everything Mizuki does as a tutorial boss is perfect. I really have no faults for him. He's just not in the top 5 because he's a first boss. Otherwise, I really enjoyed it. Our good old friend Tokichiro checks in at number 6, the first spot outside the top 5. It's kind of weird. I don't pay attention to the plot too much in the Nioh games. I just can't really understand it, but even I could feel kind of the impact of fighting our old buddy Tokichiro. You kind of see him as this goofy guy traveling along with you. There's one cutscene where he's getting his butt kicked and he doesn't appear like he can fight. And then we encounter him finally for the first time, and I love this fight. The music is wonderful. The level design's not too bad. It's kind of a big open arena, gives you enough room to do what you need to do with some stuff on the outside, like the giant crystals and things like that. I can't say a ton about his boss design. He's a basic human. I really like the fact, though, that they threw in that cool voiceover laugh that he does, that slow motion laugh. Just kind of makes him a badass. I found him really difficult, and I think others have mentioned he wasn't too bad. I probably was in the teens with attempts for Tokichiro. Maybe not that much, probably like 10 or 11. But I really just like this fight. You're just fighting an old friend. He's my second favorite human boss in the game. And, when it was finally over, I was really relieved. I found him really challenging. You constantly have to be dodging that monkey that's jumping at you, and he's got those lethal distance attacks where he whips those fire blades at you that ultimately took me down a lot. So this is a great fight. You're fighting an old ally that just felt you and another guy just doing straight up combat, not really cheap best man wins, and just had a great time with Tokichiro. And now we're in the top 5. We're starting off this list with Shiobata Katsui. First things first, this is my favorite soundtrack in all of Nioh, and when they brought it back, I was absolutely, like, my skin started to tingle when I entered the boss arena and I heard that music. It's like, no way they brought this song back. He's a really cool design boss. You know, this is his yokai version of a human that I believe you fight earlier in the side quest, but he turns into this giant rhino thing that's just all over the place and screaming these visceral screams and spinning around and flailing, and you know, he enters this dark mode where he just keeps rolling back and forth and really gives you a time to breathe. You know, level design's okay. There's not much to it, just kind of a basic room. So as far as the difficulty, from what I understand, he got patched out because he was too difficult the first time around. So I believe I fought him after this game was patched, and I found his difficulty to be incredibly fair, not too out of the realm of challenging, just right. But everything else about this fight was just a lot of fun. Everything built together to make a very enjoyable fight. And when it was over, I was actually kind of sad. Not only because of the music, I just love that soundtrack, and I don't think they play it again the rest of the game, but just a great fight overall, and worthy of a spot in the top 5. Oh, Shuten Doji, you drunk son of a bee. What a weird, amazingly cool design boss. This human beast with the flying orange hair that keeps telling you during the fight he's drunk and he's carrying a bottle and you can shoot it for damage, and he has to keep refilling it, and he falls over and he sprays fire, and gosh, he could be probably my favorite design boss, and that's why he's high up on this list. Love the music too. It's a really fun soundtrack, kind of haunting. The level's really unique. You're in this water and there's crystals around you and you can hit some of them. I'm not sure if it correlates to anything boss-wise, if he is not able to fill up his tankard as much when you're taking out some of those crystals. I found his difficulty to be right on, probably a touch on the easy side, because he is a bit slow, and for those people who, like myself, who used the gun a lot, I was able to get off a lot of attacks, but I did have multiple attempts on this boss, just trying to learn what he was doing, falling over and spitting fire and changing up his combos. I really enjoyed this fight. He was fairly challenged, but the reason he earns a spot up here is just because he was such a unique experience with a great soundtrack, and a very memorable boss. I did not expect to be fighting someone like him. You know, these games always make these new style of bosses, but nothing like this. This was a thrill. My favorite human boss in Nioh 2 is Azai Nagamasa. I am stunned to have read through some of the wiki and other people's comments that have said he's an easy boss. I found him incredibly difficult, and I don't know why. I just, you know, there's a point in Nioh 2 when I felt under-challenged, and Azai actually changed my whole thought process on how this game was going to go. I can never get his rhythm down. This slow-moving guy coming at you with this eagle thing covering himself up as a giant shield and constantly stomping up and down, and then he has AoE attacks, which I could just never get a hang of. So for me, the difficulty was perfect. I found him really freaking difficult. You know, like I said, others not so much, but I could not get around his dark mode when he spammed those yellow feathers at you. I don't know how many times those things took me out. The design of the level isn't too bad. It gives you enough room to what you need to do. But the music is just spot on. Love the soundtrack. So this was another great fight, and he is my favorite human-esque fight. I know he's, you know, yokai form, but he's still human, and I love this fight. He actually, for a while, I was kind of disappointed that this game was getting really easy, and Azai actually restored my faith in Nioh that this was going to be a really hard challenge. And like I said, I know people had an easier time with him. There have been bosses that I had a really easy time with, and others were like, that guy was really tough. So we all have our different experiences, so go easy on me. He is number 3 on my list. He is one of my favorite bosses in this game. So I don't think there's very much surprise who the best 2 bosses are in this game. I think a lot of people probably feel the same. It's just the order in which people place them. Kashin Koji is my number 2. He is my runner-up for favorite bosses in Nioh 2. I think one of the biggest gut punches I've had in this game was beating him and then realizing I'm only halfway through, and I was very disappointed and frustrated that I thought I had it down. But he's a really well-designed boss. The only knock I can potentially see from some people is that he can get a bit cheap at times, but I did find a way to alleviate that. So, his melee attacks are very telegraphed, even though they're unblockable. He typically spams 4 of them. His sky attacks, where he drops out of the sky, are very easy to read. His magic attacks, counterable. I found myself waiting for him to do his ice sword so I could get some strong counters in. The thing that really helped me in the second phase when he switched to his clone part was staying hyper aggressive. So the sloth spell really bailed me out here. I was able to cast sloth on him in the second phase and pretty much just stay on top of him, where I could force him to do his slow moving melee, and I would just continuously punish that. And he only switched into clones near the very end of the fight, and then my heart started pumping because I basically beat him with no elixirs left and no health left, and it was just down to the wire. You really don't understand what he's up to most of the game, other than being this weird, creepy scarecrow. But when you do get into the arena with him, it's a real fun experience. The level gives you just enough to move around and stay on your toes. But not really anywhere to hide. Music very dark and harrowing and creepy and upbeat all at the same time. I was fortunate enough that I beat him after a few attempts. I've read other people have found him to be one of the most difficult bosses in the game. Second for some to the end boss. But otherwise, I really find a hard time faulting anything in this guy. A thrilling experience that really made me learn. I had to really teach myself what he was up to and learn all his different movesets and his elements and prepare myself in multiple different ways. And, just short of the top spot, but an otherwise great boss fight. I'm really hopeful that you guys will check out my boss fight on my channel for Otakemaru after you get a chance to watch this boss ranking, to see why I love this boss so much and why he is my favorite boss in Nioh 2. It's learning. I felt like I was back in school, and studying him became kind of my obsession for almost 2 hours. Learning what I needed to do, getting through the first phase where it's not too challenging, to kind of waiting out his quick ice and fire stages, to getting it to the final part where you more or less know what to expect, but it's still just heart pumping. This is an incredibly well designed final boss. After a first couple attempts at him, I didn't think I had a chance in hell to beat him. I contemplated getting summons and just saying, I'm done with this, I'm moving on. And I kept saying, no, I'm gonna do this. And there were a couple instances when I had him down to a sliver and I panicked and I started trying to shoot my bow at him, and he busted out his super triple blade and just absolutely carved me up. But this difficulty is exactly what these games are about. This is literally the perfect designed boss This is why Dark Souls is Dark Souls, and this is why Nioh is Nioh. It's for bosses like this, where you try a couple times and you're so frustrated you throw up your hands, but you keep going back for more. And then you learn, and then you learn, and then you learn some more, and then you finally get it, and then it all clicks. You're going to have a couple times when you get super close and you die and you want to pull your hair out, and I did that. I mean, I think I almost went bald after this fight. Everything else is just gravy. He's an incredibly designed boss. That all these phases he goes through are each unique, and they really make you pay attention to what to expect. They all coordinate with different things. So when he's in his fire stage, he's going to be kind of lumbering around doing these giant club attacks. When he's in his beginning phase, he's nimble but not super powerful. And then his final phase is just kind of, it's all for keeps. Epic boss music. The level design is pretty cool. It's not amazing, but cool stuff going on in the background, and you're kind of always on your toes looking for space to hide. I really don't have a single bad thing to say about this boss. He is what these games are all about, and he is unquestionably the best boss in Nioh 2, and a perfect capper for a really fun time. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this list. I'm sure a lot of you probably don't agree with any of it, and I'd love to welcome discussions about why I arrived where I did with some of these boss fights. But otherwise, that's my list, and I will be happy to answer any questions, even if it's about strategies to beat these bosses. I'm all ears, and maybe you guys can teach me what I was doing wrong with some fights that I found difficult. But that's my list. Be well, be safe, and I'll see you guys next time for whatever game I decide to play next. This was my boss ranking for Nioh 2. Have a wonderful day.